This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
According to Castle, social emotional learning is defined as the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Now that is a mouthful. Research clearly shows, though, the benefits of SEL. To explain, I've included links to that research in the show notes at coolcatteacher.com/E771. Life skills and SEL are teaching the same things, but for some reason, SEL seems to be a politically charged term. So maybe we shouldn't be using the term social emotional learning because in this case, as is often the case, words do matter. But what are the skills that parents want us to teach their children? Well, all the goals that are part of the definition of SEL, setting goals, working towards achieving them, approaching challenges positively and in an optimistic way are two of them. And I've also included a link to the longer list of parent priorities from this research. However, as we discuss SEL, we as teachers should remember that many parents, and rightly so, believe SEL skills, even if we call them life skills, should be developed in partnership with parents. At my school, we emphasize partnership with parents, but admittedly, this is not always possible. But our goal should still be partnership. When parents and teachers partner together, positive things can happen in a child's life. So, in today's show, game-based learning expert Dr. Matthew Farber discusses how to teach the vital life skills our students need to know using game-based learning. This is episode 771, Game-Based Learning and Life Skills, an SEL Spotlight. Today's episode is sponsored by Advancement Courses in their Tournament of Teachers Bracket Challenge. Stay tuned at the end of the show to find out how to play and win up to $2,000 in prizes. So today we're talking with my friend Dr. Matthew Farber, an assistant professor at the University of Northern Colorado, where he founded the Gaming SEL Lab. And his new book, Gaming SEL, Games as Transformation to Social and Emotional Learning, is out. Now, we're going to divide this into two parts, Matt. First, how do you relate games and social emotional learning?
Well, thanks for having me on. I've been doing this work with UNESCO MGIEP as well as Games for Change for years. And I've discovered that games can be really powerful ways to teach social emotional learning because you're active in a game, right? You take agency. And because when you take agency over what you do in a game, there's a certain emotional palette that goes with that. I've also found from talking to many game designers, including those who make SEL games like Daniel Tiger apps to commercial games like Minecraft, that really good games are designed with the player's emotional experience in mind. And that's a great starting point because that's the same starting point as what SEL is, emotional identification and emotional awareness.
I love that emotional experience. You know, I've been reading your books for a long time, teaching students to design games, but that's fascinating. So let's take some examples of individual SEL skills and relate those to games. So what would be the first one you would pick to talk about?
We could take empathy as the first one to talk about because a lot of people take that grand assumption that you take on a role of an avatar or character in a game, therefore you may have empathy.
How do you help kids develop empathy with gaming?
Well, great questions because they immerse you, they transport you into amazing fictional worlds. Some games are serious in content, some are not, but they take you on that hero's journey. In games, you can have empathy for unique situations and experiences from others. You may also develop what they call in the literature virtual empathy for non-playable characters. That ranges from the cube in Portal that players formed an emotional attachment to through other non-playable characters in games that kind of like assist you as you go. Those are amazing ways in safe practice spaces to develop skills like empathy, but I don't want to oversell it, of course. You know, it's like anything else. You can learn empathy from reading books as well. You can also learn empathy from watching movies. But what I find is that games do something called proceduralization. They break things down into concrete steps. One of the psychologists I spoke to in my book calls it EVOO. Turns out, and it's in this order, he said, it's empathy, validating feelings, and offering options. So there's a game called Kind Words where you send anonymous notes to one another. There's another one lots of teachers play in classrooms called Classcraft, and they have kudos where you can send gratitude notes. And when you want to express empathy, there are actual steps that are involved. Expressing empathy, right? And then validating that those emotions are real. Lastly, offering options, because teachers are not trained clinical psychologists. So what they can do is offer options, send to the guidance counselor, for instance, or, if they're struggling with homework, offer different strategies, right? So EVOO, and some games really do that. They break things down into those steps.
Okay, so what's your second SEL skill and as it relates to games?
I guess I could jump around here, but another one is teamwork. That's one of the impetuses for me writing the book, is teamwork. I didn't want superficial SEL. It's very easy to say, okay, 2 kids and a Chromebook. Well, we checked off the teamwork box, right? What many games do, particularly role-playing games, is something called asymmetrical design. Basically means one character can do one thing, the other character cannot. They get abilities. The board game Pandemic does this. Dungeons and Dragons does this. The old Lego video games are like the Nintendo Wii. One character can build the blocks, the other one can jump. And you got that asymmetrical design. It gives you a feeling that you can do something that the other cannot. And it really forces you to be part of a team. It'll only work if you work together. I think games can do that very well. They can not just teach what teamwork and collaboration is by explaining it, but by doing it, right? You're really part of a team. When I spoke to some of the folks at Castle, Collaborative for Academic, Social, Emotional Learning, one of the things they emphasized was developmental SEL, as they call it. So you need a certain amount of perspective taking and empathy for your teammate as you work on a team. So a lot of these skills interplay and they're interwoven.
So how about kindness and compassion? Is that something you can teach with games?
You can, and with certain types of games, right? Often we talk about games in big, broad strokes, right? But we don't do that with movies, right? Last year's Academy Award-winning Nomadland, much different than going to see an Avengers movie. So there are many, many different types of games, and some of them are really effective at teaching kindness and compassion through affecting you pro-socially to want to take change in the world. Kind words that I mentioned earlier, that's one where you send notes of kindness to one another. There are many others that involve understanding how others feel and what they're going through. We've studied a game here and in India and in the United Arab Emirates called Bury Me, My Love, text adventure game. It looks like you're on a chat app like WhatsApp on your phone, but it's a husband and wife who are Syrian refugees. You communicate with each other in real time. Sometimes you have to wait. I'm at a border crossing and you're just waiting. In fact, I found that a lot of games with SEL, they're not very transactional at all. What they are, they're called situational game design, which is a certain framework about the heuristics that are in the player's mind before they make any actions. Like, I wonder what's going to happen if I click here. And that's where we can start to transform players for the better, I think.
So one more. What do you want to pick? Ethical decision making? Is that a good one?
Yeah, that's a great one to pick because there's a lot of work around games and ethics. Games themselves are ethical machines, as Sherry Jones told me. She's very active with ISTE. They impose through their rule sets and frameworks, what they want you to do. And if you think about the trolley experiment, some people on one trolley track and another, and you can pull the lever, right? It's one of those dilemmas, right? That is impossible to solve. And a lot of games actually put that into their systems. Those are great conversation starters for classrooms. I think actually a lot of games can be played on a Nintendo Switch. If a teacher has a Switch, just get an extra dock for the classroom, unplug it from the smartboard, the HDMI cable, put it into the Switch. You only need one controller and treat it like this impossible field trip, like an interactive documentary, right? You pass around the controller, students will play for 5-10 minutes, and then they have meaning that they can bring to the conversation, to the book they're reading, to whatever content they're learning. For perspective taking in ethics, I recommend Quandary, which Full disclosure, I'm on the advisory board for, but they are free. It's from the MIT Education Arcade. It's also on Brain Pop, and it's an ethical decision-making game that also involves perspective taking, and it's made for classrooms across different content areas.
Wow, this is fascinating. The book is Gaming SEL, Games as Transformational to Social and Emotional Learning by Dr. Matthew Farber. Thank you so much. You've given us some great ideas and some great games, and we'll have to take a look at these. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Advancement Courses, for sponsoring today's show. This month, Advancement Courses is kicking off their annual Tournament of Teachers Bracket Challenge, where educators can win up to $2,000 in prizes. This year's Mischief Makers edition features some of the most incorrigible students from literature and film, including Draco Malfoy, Maruna Salt, Bart Simpson, and Ferris Bueller. From now until March 20th, choose which Mischief Maker you'd rather teach and submit your bracket in order to play. Then, from March 21st through 30th, you'll have a chance to come back and vote for your favorites in advance. Enter now and you could win prizes like a $1,000 gift card and more. Visit coolcatteacher.com/tournament. That's coolcatteacher.com/TOURNAMENT to learn more and submit your brackets.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you like this program, you can find more at coolcatteacher.com. If you wish to see more content by Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook and Twitter under Cool Cat Teacher. Thank you for listening.